Okay, kia ora tātou. Hua haere tono ana ngā mihi kia tātou I roto I te tō mai o tā tātou kaupapa I tēnei rā. Nō reira kia koutou katoa, mōrena ata marae, mihi atu ana hoki ki te hunga mātakitaki mai ana, I runga I te ipurangi, tēnā koutou. Taino atu ki ngā mea o koutou haere tawhiti mai, tēnā koutou hara mai, tēnei au te tautoko I ngā kupu a tō tātou rangatira. A Kurt, kia koutou katoa, I tēnei rā, nō reira, nau mai haere mai koutou, haere mai ki tēnei hui, I tēnei rā. Kia ora tātou, and what a wonderful opportunity to host you here in the heart of our Pukeahu campus, and also in this marae, as Kurt referenced this morning, known as Te Rau Karamū. The Karamū plant, it grows around this area of Pukeahu, and it's very, very synonymous with well-being. So the name Te Rau Karamū, I think, is also a reference to how we look after one another by having a strong relationship with Papa Tuanuku, Ranginui, and in particular Tāne Mahuta. So I wanted to just make an acknowledgement about the significance of the Karamū tree. Also in the kōrero this morning, Kurt referenced Piki Mai Rawia. So for those of you who were waiwai tapu, coming into this marae for the first time, you gathered under Piki Mai Rawia, a reference point to the hook that Maui used to fish up Te Ika a Maui, the great fish of Maui, and the hook attached itself to Te Upoko o Te Ika, the head of the fish. And so that's where you were this morning, and you've made your way across Te Rau Karamū marae into Te Whaioranga o Te Whaiao. This whare is all about wellness, it's all about sustainability, it's also about our past, our present and our future. So I just want to lay that kaupapa down this morning before our keynote speakers share their whakaaro and kōrero with us about the Sustainable Development Goals and our roles in that. I also just wanted to, I should perhaps also introduce myself, Professor Meihana Durie. I'm from Massey University, Te Kuninga ki Pūrehurua. My role at Massey is Deputy Vice-Chancellor Māori, but I have other things that I do as well. I just want to also acknowledge our colleagues who are here from the senior leadership team, Giselle Tere, tēnā kōrua, Glenn, Regina, tēnā kōrua, and everyone else, tēnei te mihi nui. Just wanted to provide some opening comments really about a Māori perspective of sustainability, and in doing so, just reflecting on some of the sentiments, both from Jason this morning in your kōrero, Jason, but also from Kurt in terms of what we've gone through as a nation in the last few days. A significant moment in time for our nation, for Māori, and also a very, very strong relevance in terms of the kingitanga to the kaupapa of this symposium today. So again, Regina and Glenn, I think you've done a wonderful job, firstly in getting the funding for this kaupapa, but actually this is really the preface of the bigger hui next year. And I think being here in Pukeahu is very significant. A couple of things about the kingitanga. From a Māori perspective, the kingitanga represents a sustainable leadership model. The sustainability is through whakapapa. And I know that many of you throughout the week would have heard that the wonderful kōrero and tributes to the late Kingi Tuheitia. And what's quite remarkable about the kingitanga as a movement is it has encountered a number of challenges over the years. And throughout all of those challenges, the kingitanga has weathered the storms, and the kingitanga has continued to flourish and has continued to ensure that the contribution to kaupapa such as sustainability is a significant one. This morning in the kōrero that Kurt gave, he mentioned parihaka, and for those of you who, and I know Giselle's a historian as well, and you'll know this kōrero, Giselle, we are on Pukeahu, which was later given the name Mount Cook. Pukeahu is the original name, and Pukeahu was one of the most sacred places used and inhabited by Te Aotearoa. Te Aotearoa had a number of cultivations around the site, and Te Aotearoa also had a papakainga here, further up the hill. And then subsequent to the arrival of colonial settlers here in Wellington, the name Mount Cook was given, and Pukeahu was pushed to the side, and of course the prison was built, the jail. And that jail also housed Taranaki leaders. And about 1869, 79, supporters of Te Tokowaru were unlawfully arrested. They were detained in the Mount Cook jail, and then they were sent further south to Dunedin. So in the kōrero from Kurt, he mentioned that we have a waiata here that we do as Massey, which recalls the traumatic experiences of Taranaki people, particularly those who were known as mauhere or prisoners. They were taken unlawfully because of their support for their leader Te Tokowaru in 1869, and then about 10 years after that, many of you will be aware of the kōrero about the parihaka ploughmen, who were agriculturalists. They were nourishing the land so that the land could give back to their people. And if you're familiar with the parihaka kōrero, very, very similar story. A number of parihaka ploughmen or farmers were detained here at the Mount Cook jail for a prolonged period of time, and they were then taken down to Dunedin, to imprisonment down there. So we have a somewhat interesting history here. And the history, I believe, is absolutely critical if we're going to give our own expression to the Sustainable Development Goals. We need to be open to history, and we need to be willing to look at the history that accompanies us in the work that we do. The Kingitanga movement, and some of you may have seen this yesterday, also has a very, very interesting history to it. In the time of Kingi Tawhiao was the son of Kingi Pōtatau Te Wherowhero, and in the time of Kingi Tawhiao, that was also the period of time, of course, that the Waikato Wars began under the leadership of Governor Grey. Great South Road, which traverses along the side of the Waikato River, and on the other side you would have seen Taupiri, Kuwao, yesterday, where the Ariki was buried. Great South Road was built under the directive of Governor Grey to bring colonial troops in to eradicate the Kingitanga. And so these places and spaces are incredibly rich in history, and it's important that we understand when we speak about the sustainable development what that looks like from a Māori perspective. Something else that I just wanted to, I guess, share with you this morning is that the Kingitanga movement, I believe, sends messages to our nation, and it's up to us whether or not we take on board those messages. The most recent one being tākiri tū te kotahitanga, tākiri tū te mana motu hake. Let unity prevail. Those are the words of Kingi Tuheitia. And also let our distinctive identity prevail. So sustainability from that regard is about looking after, protecting the things that protect us. The Kingitanga movement has a phenomenal history, but over the years and over the decades, it's made a huge contribution to good outcomes in this country. There have been particular points in time that I think are quite remarkable as well. During the time of Kingi Te Rata, he was supported by his cousin, Te Puia Hirangi, also known as Princess Te Puia. The Kingitanga were previously based in South Auckland and Mercer there, and then in about 1920, 21, Te Puia Hirangi made the determination that her people would shift. The Spanish flu arrived in New Zealand at around about 1917, 1918. A number of tamariki of young people lost their parents to the Spanish flu from that whānau and from the people of the Kingitanga. So Te Puia Hirangi made a decision to shift her people back to Tūranga Waiwai. It became known as Tūranga Waiwai. The thing which is really interesting in that, of course, is that Te Puia Hirangi had a vision for the economy of Tainui. She could see that they could prosper financially through what we might call a circular economy. She had already seen that in her time. And she had also proposed to the Minister of Health at the time that the first Māori hospital be established in Mahinarangi, the whare where the Kingi was laying at rest over the last week. That request was denied. But what's really, really important to note from history is that there is still a high need for things like a Māori hospital. Te Puia's moimoia, her vision, was that the hospital would have two things. It would have the provision of rongoa, as a Māori practice around wellness and well-being, and the other part of that was Western medicine. So having the two working together in collaboration so that good things could come of that. Te Puia's other vision, of course, was about the economy. And the Māori economy now sits at about 1.2 billion. The recent discussions from the kingitanga with iwi across the motu have been about the economy. Is it time now for Māori to establish, in essence, a circular iwi economy? So I'm going to leave that with our experts like Jason Mika to share a bit more detail on that, Jason. But those are remarkable insights that Te Puia and others had a long, long time ago now in the 1920s. A few other things to share with you in terms of where we've come from and where we're going as a nation. What we know is that sustainability and all of these goals that you see here in front of you, we need to think about what our distinctive contribution is going to be to the realisation of these goals. One of the things that we know about our marae here is that for Māori, the marae is our principal home. Everything that we do as a people, as a community, as a hapu, as an iwi, is an extension really of what happens on the marae. So I'd like to kind of posit this idea that the marae is really the epitome of sustainability. When we think about what it provides for communities, it sustains people. If we look at what's happened at Tūranga Waiwai over the last 7 days, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of manuhiri have been looked after. Incredible undertaking. So in all of the work that you do, my challenge perhaps, or perhaps a provocation, is to think about where your work might sit in relation to places like a marae. Marae are not all like this. This, as Kurt was saying this morning, is really the embodiment of what's also known as a cosmic tree, the tree of life. And if you look around these are my slides, by the way. If you look around the whare, you'll see these representations of life. And these are vivid reminders to us what our role is in terms of our responsibilities to the environment, our responsibilities to each other. And also it reminds us too about life itself. Right in the middle there, and I just want to acknowledge Nathan Matamua. I know Nathan's here. Nathan and his whānau has spent a lot of time, particularly with your brother, I know, Nathan Rangi Matamua, exploring the mātauranga behind the maramataka. So what you see here is a Māori version of how we understand time to be. We go by nights rather than days. We go by lunar cycles rather than times. And that guides us in terms of when we have good energy, when we have low energy, the best times of the year to meet, the best times of the night together and to share kōrero. So I really encourage you to also think about mātauranga Māori in terms of sustainability. We know that the sun rises every morning, and we know that it sets, and we also know that the moon comes out in particular ways every night. So these āhua and our whare are reminders to us all about our connection to the environment. So I welcome you here to Te Rau Karamū. Te whaioranga o te whaiao is this whare. And where we had morning tea this morning, te whaioranga o te taiao is about walking into the world of light. And those names are reference points, that the whaiao is really the space between light and dark. The representation of the marae Aotearoa, darkness. You come through te pō, you come into this space which is a place of wānanga, sharing kōrero, sharing whakaaro, and then when you go further into the whare out the back there, a place of light. So the key messaging there, whānau, is to never rush time. And I roto i te reo Māori me tū koe hei rangatira mo te wā, kaue tuku ko te wā hei tū rangatira mau. So always be in control of time and never let time control our lives. And that's a reference point to Maui Tikitiki Ataranga, who was the project manager behind slowing down Tamanui Te Rā, the sun. He was the youngest in his whānau, if you remember that kōrero, and persuaded his older brothers that he had a plan which would work. The real essence of that story is that we have to have a balance between light and dark to be healthy and well. If we have too much darkness, we can be traumatized. If we have too much light, we can be traumatized. So that kōrero is a reference to time. And I know we've got a tight schedule today, Regina, but I'm slowing the time down a bit here. So whānau, look, it's a huge honour for us Te Kuninga ki Pukeahu to host the beginning of a number of symposiums that are coming up. Welcome to Te Rau Karamū, welcome to our whare, welcome to our marae, to our university, and I just also want to acknowledge all of the speakers who are here with us today. Some familiar faces. Jason, it's good to see you again. But also, finally, I guess my challenge is to really think about this point in time for our nation. We've reached a remarkable time here. Very, very seldom do we ever see the changing of a monarch, and we've had two in the last 18 years, and I really believe that ngā waihono i te pō, Te Ariki Nui will be our monarch for a long, long time, for many, many years ahead. So as a nation, I think it's a time to reflect on the remarkable contribution of a remarkable leader, Kingi Tuheitia, who, particularly in his last year, has brought people together like never before in our history, particularly iwi. That's a remarkable achievement, and we need to honour that. But I also just want you to think about where the future might take us. It's very timely that we're having this symposium today, given what's happening. And finally, whānau, let's not forget our past. Let's make sure that we're aware of our history. When we talk about our sustainable goals, development, what does that look like? And let's always look to the past to understand where we're going to go to in the future. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi nui kia koutou katoa. I also have the honour of introducing one of our former colleagues, Jason. So it's great to, Professor Jason Mika, great to have you with us. I know it's been a really challenging time for Waikato University over the past week, and so it's wonderful to have you with us here. I've got a big kōrero here, and I don't know if I'll read the whole thing. I just wanted to reflect actually on Jason's contribution to our university and the time, Jason, that you were with us. Jason was really one of the movers and shakers of advancing outcomes for Māori in business, in the economy, and for also bringing together some very, very significant pieces of research that have, I think, probably laid a roadmap for our people in terms of our economy, business outcomes, and how to really unite Māori in thinking strategically about what that looks like for our people for the future. So, just very briefly, Jason was born in Whakatane, and as you heard this morning, tūhoi ngā te awa, whakatohia ngā te kahununu. E whitu ana tamariki, tino pai e hoa, 7 children. Don't know how you fit all the other things in. He's also a Professor of Māori Business at Te Raupapa Waikato Management School, University of Waikato. Jason's research, teaching, writing and practice centres around Indigenous business philosophy in multiple sites, sectors and scales, including Indigenous trade, tourism, agribusiness and marine economy. In 2015, Jason completed a PhD at Massey in business, and in 2019 was awarded the Fulbright Ngā Pai o Te Maramatanga Senior Scholar Award and spent some time at Stanford University. I remember that, Jason, a wonderful opportunity. He is also a member of the Academy of Management, Australian and New Zealand Academy, the Australian and New Zealand Academy of Management, Te Aparangi Royal Society of New Zealand. And prior to coming into academia, Jason was a management consultant and government analyst. His research has contributed to public policy on trade, environment, statistics, tax, amongst other areas. So it's a great honour hoa to be able to have you with us today. E te whānau, ho mai te pakipaki, mo tō tātou ahorangi a Jason.
Hoki rā. Kia ora tātou. E honore mōku te tū i tēnei whare anō ki te kōrero kia tātou i nā kōrero kairu nei i te rangi nei. Tēnā koe, Professor Durie. Nā mihi nui kia koe, o tira kia Professor Regina, me Glenn, me nā hoa mahi tahito o te kuninga ki Pukeahu. Just really wonderful to be here and to have this opportunity to have a kōrero today. And I guess I was just reflecting on the fact that when Regina sort of contacted me and says, "Oh, would you like to be our keynote?" And I thought, "Oh, Okay, and I was so relieved actually this morning because we've had 2 keynote speakers already. One of them was the kaumātua on the pai, the young kaumātua Kurt, who gave us a bit of a deep kōrero on mātauranga of this whare and this land. And then we've had another keynote speaker, which is Professor Durie, who's just explained the whakapapa of this whare, the history and the meaning of this whare, and the whenua and the land and the significance of it, and the importance, and also the, I guess, the meaning why we're here in this whare, and why it's the right whare for us to be in for this kōrero right now. So we've had 2 keynotes already, so I feel totally relieved now. I can just say what I want to say, and then just leave it to you fellas to, to pick it up and do with it what you wish. And I was, this morning I was sitting outside by the gardens here, and I was watching one of these tangata mowing the lawns and sort of tidying up the place, and it made me think of something, and I think, my gosh, I need to do my lawns. I haven't done my lawns for months, and every time it rains, I think, oh yeah, awesome, I've saved. I don't have to do them again, and my wife's looking at me thinking, come on, those lawns are not going to mow themselves. But I'm just really pleased to be here in this whare, my first time in this whare. My kids are Massey babies, the younger ones. They grew up at Palmerston North, running around the hills and across the river at the back of the business school there. So really lovely to be here at Te Kunga ki Pukeahu at Pukeahu campus. And also just at the cup of tea time, I sort of come across this little brochure. So we're on TV. There I saw this wonderful little brochure that says Master of Sustainable Development Goals. Master? Wow! And I thought, this is pretty awesome. So if anyone at home is watching and wondering what to do with their time, this is a pretty good use of your time and money. So I highly recommend it, because as an alumni of Massey University, former colleague, you can't go wrong there. So it's a wonderful development, and I encourage everyone to pick it up who's not doing anything. The kōrero of the symposium. Now, I read this here. How to achieve the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Let's ask nature. And I thought, oh, where? That's a big question. And I thought, well, what's the answer? Well, the short answer is the title of my kōrero, which is Me whakarono ki tō tātou whāia. So let's just listen to our mother. We all listen to our mothers, right? When she tells us, anei te kōrero, me pēnei, me pērā, we listen to our mothers, right? So we must whakarono to our mother. Ko ai tō tātou whāia, ko papa tuānuku. Mother Earth is our mother, all of our mother. And so we must listen. So how do we listen to our mother? How do we talk to our mother? How do we ask our mother? What should we do? What's the right thing for us to do? And so that's pretty much the kōrero, a big kōrero, nui te kōrero. It's a big question. And I think I'll have a stab at it, answering that question, how we might do that. Just building on the kōrero of Professor Durie and our kaumātua Kurt. So I'm going to push a button and hopefully it moves. Ana, kua pai. Ko te mea tuatahi, he mihi aroha ki tēnei tangata, tō tātou āriki, kingi tūheitia, pō tātou te whera te tuawhitu, kua moe e tōna moenga roa. So just to really echo the sentiments of everyone today, just to acknowledge his contribution to te ao Māori, te motu, the country, and all of the sort of mahi that he's done in his lifetime to make the world a better place for all of us. And his kōrero around particularly the idea of kotaitana, bringing us all together. And it's just, it was incredibly moving to be part of and attend the tangihana earlier this week. So we have a new āriki, and I'm looking forward to seeing her mahi in the coming years and time. So what do I want to kōrero about? I I don't write speeches, I just talk. And so you're going to get a bit of a lecture, because I'm a lecturer. So, I like to talk. So I'm just going to say what I need to say. So I thought, well, we need a bit of structure here. So first thing off is whakapapa. Professor Durie talked about whakapapa. I'm going to talk a little bit about whakapapa so we know who we are, so we can get to know one another and how we connect with the kaupapa of the day. Second one is te ao Māori, the Māori worldview, the Māori society as a way of seeing the world, and to sort of just help us answer some really tough questions that are right in front of us today about sustainable development over here. Te tiriti o Waitangi as a framework of power sharing. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about Te tiriti o Waitangi, not the history, because you know the history, but what does it mean for us when we're thinking about sustainable development and how we tackle the challenges of the day together. Kaupapa number 4 is waiora, well-being. We're in a whare of well-being, whose mission is well-being. Its kaupapa, its essence, is well-being. And what I'm observing is the convergence of thinking and action on sustainability and well-being. So what does that look like from a te ao Māori perspective? Lastly, we'll get to the question that's been posed at the start, which is the SDGs. Let's ask nature. So how do we ask Papa Tuanuku about sustainable goals and what that means? How do we have that kōrero with our mother? So whakapapa, no hea, no wai, kia tūhono ai tātou ia tātou. Mauna poatu ko mauna poatu tētahi o ku mauna. And so one of the places that's important to me and to our people, our Tūhoi tribe, is Mauna Pohatu, because we all come from there. And this kōrero was given to us here. Hokia ki o mauna, kia pūria koe e nā hau o tāwhiri mātea. Return to your mountains so that you may be cleansed and revitalised by the winds of tāwhiri mātea. And it's just really an encouragement to us, each of us, to go back to the places that we come from, that we belong to, that we feel a connection to be revitalised, to have the kaha, to carry on all of the mahi that we each do in our homes, in our communities, in our workplaces, in our businesses on sustainable development. Mika te tāwhao, tētahi oku koraua. This is one of my great-grandfathers who's having a bit of fun here at Waikirikiri Marae in Ruatoki. And one of our other uncles there, Tamanikora. So I used to love talking to that karau, and he was always correcting me and always straightening me out, which is awesome. And you really sort of miss those times of being corrected by your elders. When you get sort of older, you think, well, you've got to make choices. So Tūhoi are the descendants of Toi, Hape, Pōtiki, Toroa, and also Tūhoi. And so it's also important to remember who we are and where we come from. Now, one of the children of Mika te Tāwhao is Te Mana Mika, and he's from Hāmua, our hapu at Waikirikiri, and he was also in the First World War. And so it's important to remember and acknowledge the sacrifices our tipuna made for us to be here today, to be able to carry on their legacy and their mahi. This is Mrs. Anne Scrivens, who's one of the daughters of Te Mana Mika and Ripeka Puihipi. And Mrs. Anne Scrivens brought me up. She's my kuia, my grandmother, my mum's mum. And I was so grateful to her for bringing me up, along with my two older sisters who used to just give me the dong and straighten me out, so very appreciative of them. And one of the important lessons my kuia taught me, Mrs. Anne Scrivens, is humility. And one thing about university study, what happens, you go to university, you think you know a few things. You think you know, yes, and you go home and you tell mum and dad what's what, and they tell you, They sort of straighten you out, they correct you. And I was so grateful that my grandmother, probably 3 months before she passed away in 2010, she reminded me about this lesson of humility. And it's a tūhoi trait. We all have humility to some extent, but tūhoi really kind of epitomised this value of humility. And my grandmother reminded about me, who I am and where I come from, and to be humble, to come out of the clouds, back to earth, Jason Mika. And I was so grateful that she gave me that lesson before she passed away. Another of our uncles, Uncle Maynard Apiata, another Mika, who's presently living and has been living on our whenua back home at Ruangtoki. He is an expert on te ngāhere te urawera, on our tipuna, te urawera, and his children and all of the cousins there and aunties, they hold that mātauranga. And it's a different kind of mātauranga than the one that we will get out of the library and on our papers. It's a lived mātauranga. And I'm so grateful that Uncle Maynard practices kaitiakitana every day and shares that mātauranga with the whānau, with our hapu, with our iwi, to look after our mother, ko tō tātou whaia, ko Papatuanuku, so she's able to look after us. And the kōrero there is one of the kōrero from our esteemed leaders, Tāmati Kruja, who's the chairperson of Tūhoi Turu Taumatua, talking about guardianship. So when Te Urawera became Te Urawera, not a national park, they had a board, and Uncle Maynard's on the board. And Tāmati Kruja is saying here, the kōrero that he says is, well, we realised after a time the board is not the kaitiaki of Te Urawera. It's the bushmen and women who are living in te ngāhere and live and breathe there. They work there, they sleep there, they hunt there, they gather, they fix, they repair. They are the kaitiaki. So if we want to understand our relationship with Papatuanuku, we have to acknowledge who are the real kaitiaki, not the board members reading their papers, having a nice cup of tea and a lunch in the boardroom. No, karekau. It's the ones in the ngāhere sort of cutting the tracks and fixing the huts. So, he paku noi heo tērā o te whakapapa o oku tūpuna. It's a little bit about my connection to who I am and where I come from, and hopefully we'll get to know one another through that sharing of whakapapa. I also want to, I'm glad that Professor Durie talked about time, because I'm pretty useless at keeping time. So I'm looking to Regina. As soon as Regina's get, e hoa, kāti, kua rahi tērā, that's enough. I will sort of tauhua, but I'm going to keep going until she does that. So the next kaupapa I want to talk about, kaupapa number 2, te ao Māori. And this is something I really sort of started to learn and figure out when I met Professor Meihana's dad and sort of started reading his kōrero, you know, and hohonura watu. So I want to talk about te ao Māori sort of as a framework for seeing the world as a unified whole and what that means for our mahi here in terms of sustainable development. Now, how we see the world here in Aotearoa on Pukeahu right now, on Te Rau Karamū right now, we share that kind of way of thinking with some other people in the world. There's apparently, according to someone who's doing the count, someone's doing the calculations, 476 million Indigenous peoples in the world. Wow. So there's a lot of Indigenous people out there. 4,000 Indigenous languages. Wow. You know what that means, eh? There's 4,000 different ways of thinking about the world and what we should be doing. There's not just 17 ways. There's 4,000 ways of thinking about the world we live in and what's the best thing we can do to look after the world so she looks after us. So what are some sort of common elements within those Indigenous worldviews? Well, one of the first things is that we are part of nature, you and me. We're not separate from nature. We are part of nature, nature is part of us. And so what happens when we take care of nature? She takes care of us. It's like you're looking after yourself. So you feed nature with good things will come back to you. So because we're actually looking after ourselves. So which is a different way of thinking, eh? So, and there's 4 key elements that sort of Indigenous sustainability, when we think about this relationship and this worldview from an Indigenous point of view. First one is kindness. Kindness. Have we heard about kindness before? Manaakitana? Yeah, we need a bit of kindness. People are the land. People are the land. They are. We are. You and me. The environment is life-giving. We get life and we receive life from the environment, you know. So we have to look after our lives by looking after the environment. Self-determination is important. Indigenous peoples want to do the right thing and we should be supporting them to do so. And self-determination enables that to happen. So back home here in Aotearoa and Te Ao Māori, the Māori worldview, we heard the kōrero this morning about Ranginui and Papatūānuku, I rote tēnei whare. And we talked about nā ātua. Nā ātua, nā tangata, nā tīpuna, Māui, and the tīpuna who were establishing life here. And they had a particular way of thinking about the world, which is, we call this nowadays, Te Ao Māori, the Māori worldview. Now what comes from that is that we see ourselves as belonging to the whenua and the whenua belonging to us. We are in search constantly for balance in terms of those relationships that we have with Papatūānuku. We're always trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And so we're looking for guidance. And what I'm suggesting here is we should look for guidance in Te Ao Māori in terms of how we should manage those relationships between ourselves and our environment, Papatūānuku. That worldview that comes from Ranginui and Papatūānuku and their loving embrace and their separation by the atua provides us with a framework. A framework, I love this word. It's a way of thinking. I heard about it in 1995. I thought, wow, that's a cool word. I'm going to keep using it. So I'm still using that word. A framework for thinking, a way of making sense of the world that we live in and try to figure stuff out and what's important, what's not. And this is sort of, this is how I think about Te Ao Māori. What does it include? So if your bosses, your colleagues say, oh, I think we need a bit of Te Ao Māori in the department. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, well, this is what it means to me. Number one, te reo me ngā tikana Māori. The Māori language, Māori culture, kawa, all of those sorts of values that keep us on the straight and narrow, help us to guide us in terms of what's right and what we should do in certain situations. Number two, kaupapa Māori, Māori philosophy, Māori approaches. So if you're trying to do something according to Te Ao Māori, you want to look at, well, what's the Māori approach to this? What's the Māori philosophy? What's the reason? Where does that come from and how do we apply that? So kaupapa Māori, mātauranga Māori. Where does the knowledge come from and how do we add to that knowledge of Te Ao Māori? And who's holding that knowledge? And where do we get in the library? Or do we sit on the pai and listen to people like, you know, our kaumātua Kurt and Professor Durie? You know, so where is that mātauranga? So mātauranga Māori is important. Te pai tawhiti o moi moia. You know, thinking about our aspirations. What do we want for our children and their children and our whānau and our communities? So pai tawhiti is also important for us to, an element of Te Ao Māori. So we've got to provide for all of those things. So next time someone says, oh, let's do Te Ao Māori, okay. Oh, we need mātauranga, kaupapa, te reo, tikana, pai tawhiti, moi moia. We need all of that. Well, who's going to do that? Okay. Mātauranga Māori. What is mātauranga Māori? I love this. Kōrero. Kōrero come from Sean Aotearoa, an economist, Māori economist from Ngāti Porou, from one of Meihana's relations, and also Garth Harmsworth, two whare toa scientists. Mātauranga Māori is everything visible and invisible existing in the universe. How about that? Can't get any bigger than that, eh? So we've got a lot to do. We've got to figure out what that is. And Professor Hereni Moko Mead lists about 17 different ways of thinking about mātauranga, so there's a start. Got to keep going. Mātauranga Māori is a method. It's not only knowledge, but it's the method for generating knowledge. And it's a way of finding meaning and sense in the world and how we apply that knowledge in the world today. Kaupapa Māori, what is that? Well, here's some, we've got to lean on these ones here who have spent their years toiling away, busy in the library and on the pai and in the whare, thinking about kaupapa Māori and helping us to make sense about what that means. And so it's kind of thinking about if you want to apply a Māori approach, it's okay. That's what these professors have done for us. They said it's okay to apply a Māori approach because Māori approaches for Māori people work. You know, you try it out and you'll find that the outcomes improve, well-being improves, opportunities are accessible to our whānau when we apply and we legitimise and we validate te reo, tikana and whakaaro Māori and Māori management approaches. And then Māori aspirations, you know. What do Māori want was a question that apartheid that was asked about in the 1980s, 1990s. What do these Māori want? What do they really want? Oh, well, this professor here, very distinguished gentleman, you know, Professor Sir Mason Durie, he spent his life trying to answer that question of Māori aspirations. What are Māori aspirations? Collectively, individually, as whānau, hapu, iwi, all of us together, the whole mutu. And his kōrero back in 2016, you can click on the link, it'll take you to his kōrero, you can listen to for yourself and make your own mind up. But Māori are thriving. Who doesn't want all Māori to be thriving? Māori are thriving as Māori, flourishing whānau, forward-looking, vibrant reo tikanga, booming Māori economy, regenerated natural environment, rebalanced constitutional arrangements. Bit of work to do there, but, you know, we're getting there. We're getting there. So we're so grateful. I'm so grateful for the work that, and all the books that he wrote. I think, man, how did he write all those? To explain what Māori aspirations are. Te reo me ngā tikana Māori. Listening to the language and our culture and our values, seeing them expressed on the roadsides of Rotorua. I'm not sure if that sign is still up there, but hope it still is. On the radio, on the TV, on the internet, and so forth, everywhere. Because that's the way we express and understand te ao Māori and how it makes sense of how it applies into our mahi. 17 goals here. Te tiriti o Waitangi. I'm going to shift now to te tiriti o Waitangi. And I want to sort of say with the tiriti o Waitangi is that to me it's a framework of power sharing and truth telling. Now te tiriti o Waitangi, all of the kōrero that I've read and I've sort of heard over the years, it comes down to this one thing of is saying that how do we share power? How do we allow Māori to have a say on what's the best for our people? All of our people, not just Māori people, but the whole country. How do we allow Māori to have a say over that? And that requires power sharing, which is a very difficult thing to do in a sovereign environment where King Charles is the, you know, reigning supreme. Te tiriti o Waitangi, when we look at the whakapapa of that agreement, we have to look at the whole thing. What's the whole thing again? The Declaration of Independence, 1835. Starts there, story starts there. Not everyone wants to go back there, but yeah, we've got to go back there to 1835. Why is that important for Te tiriti o Waitangi? Because it affirms the sovereignty of New Zealand in the hands of the chiefs of Aotearoa at that time. So the British Crown had recognised that Māori had sovereignty via the chiefs. They said, yeah, kai a koutou te mana. 1840, hello, no, tables turned. We now have the mana. British Crown has the mana, we have the sovereignty and we're going to run things. And so we have to look carefully at the change that happened between 1835, 1840, and what happened subsequently. And we have to read carefully what the treaty says. The preamble, the nice introductory text, nice words there, very good, sort of the lawyers will love that bit. Always got to look at the preamble. Then the provisions. What do the articles actually say? What's the words in them? Then the principles. Okay, we're having a discussion about principles, but they're there for the moment. So the challenge is, the tiriti o Waitangi is a framework for us to understand our relationships and how we might share power to achieve sustainable development goals going forward. So how are we doing that? How are we providing? And I'm glad to see Kunaga Kupurehurua, tiriti-led institution, awesome. Tino kaha, tino kaha. Now, the magical thing, I got 10 minutes? Okay, 10 minutes, folks. I'm going to speed it up. Okay, 10 minutes. Now, because it's just getting warmed up here. Now, you think about the Treaty of Waitangi. There's a preamble, eh? You have to read the... Now, who would imagine someone could invent a theory of economy, of society, of social well-being from a preamble? Well, take some Māori. Associate Professor Manuka Henare, the late, wonderful Manuka Henare, he squeezed out a theory of economy from the preamble of the Treaty of Waitangi. So if you read it very carefully, there's a kupu in there called Ātanoho. And he writes about peace as a way of approaching a sustainable economy, a sustainable enterprise, which he talks about economy of mana, which is taking our tipuna ideas around how we relate to one another, how we produce, how we consume, how we share. And so he talks about, that idea of economy from a preamble, not even getting into the articles yet. One of the other reflections about the Treaty of Waitangi is truth-telling. I got some Aboriginal scholar mates in Aussie, and I hear this kōrero all the time about truth-telling and reconciliation. And the kōrero there, I think, wow, okay. So if we accept the truth, what happened, the history, and we know our history, and we know the bad stuff that happened and the consequences of that, and we don't shy away from that. We accept it as truth. We're able to reconcile. In other words, we're able to get over our grief, our trauma, and move forward together in a place of kindness, of well-being for one another. So it got me thinking about, what does truth-telling look like in Aotearoa? Because they're going crazy over it over in Aussie. Oh, okay, what does that look like? Cultural safety. Māori nurse come up with that idea. And now all our nurses go through this idea of cultural safety, being aware of our culture and its impact on others. Treaty settlements are a way of truth-telling, accepting that, there's some mistakes that were made, we say sorry, we accept, let's move forward, truth-telling. Local history in schools, finally, we're getting there. So there's a bit of progress, a bit of progress on the truth-telling. And then we get to this kōrero, the Waitangi Tribunal. Judge Craig Coxhead, alumni from Waikato Law School, has been making an inquiry as to what is the truth behind Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the Declaration of Independence, he whakaputanga. And what they concluded through their inquiry is that, this is what he concluded. In 1840, the rangatira who signed Te Tiriti did not cede their sovereignty. They did not. How's that? They did not. It was taken. It was taken. And so when we think about, this idea of truth-telling and power sharing that is part of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, we have to accept the truth and work with it and work within it to move forward. Waiora. What I've observed is there's a convergence on this idea of well-being and sustainability in all of the research that's going on and all the policy narratives. It's gone a bit quieter down the road there. Parliament, well-being, maybe we could do something else. But the Treasury has invested like 15 years in figuring out what does well-being look like. What's Treasury got to do with well-being? Everything. You want to understand what's the priority in government, follow the money. You can listen to the kōrero and the parliament, but you follow the money. Where's the money going? Is it going into things that are going to generate sustainable well-being for us or not? And that's what the Treasury's been trying to do with this living standards framework. The problem with the living standards framework is that there's no working model. There's no economic model that underpins it to say how it functions. How does it deliver on the outcomes that it hopes to deliver on? Now, this is coming from the economist, my mate at Waikato, so don't ask me about that. But that's what he says, you know. That's what he says. They're also trying to understand, well, what's a Māori view of well-being as it applies to economy and finance and policy? He ana waiora, beautiful framework, beautiful. You know, all of our mātauranga, all of our Māori values, all of our whakaaro about what well-being looks like is in He Ara Waiora. So thank you, Sasha McMeeking, and all of the mātauranga experts that were part of that kaupapa. How do you operationalise that? How do you turn it into a functioning model of sustainable practice for business, for economy, for enterprise? How do we do that? Aotearoa. When I moved from Massey to Waikato University, I got invited to join this project, and I had to figure out what it was first. It's a circular economy. And so their goal in this project is sustainable well-being for all New Zealanders using this idea of circular economy. And they're trying to figure out, well, what's the sustainable materials, sustainable business, sustainable policy look like? And so they says, oh, Jace, we'll give you a job to do. You can explain it for us. Can you write a little paper on it? And so the chief the chief researcher on this is saying, Jace, where's the paper at? And I says, hey, it's coming. So we started, we're getting there. I came across this little quote as I was sort of writing this paper with my colleagues, very esteemed colleagues, no more than me. Come across this quote here. A business person, a scholar, you know, and a practitioner, Willis Harman, 1987, he wrote this. He was thinking about all the stuff we're thinking about and talking about today. Argues that this is Harman, argues that ecological and human consequences of industrialisation is making way for a new paradigm where everything is connected to everything in a single unity with a deep spiritual centre. Hey, 1987, Te Rau tangata. Ooh, sounds like te ao Māori to me. And so what got me thinking there is, well, how do we go there? How do we get from where we are to where Harman was thinking, where te ao Māori is thinking, where the Indigenous worldview is thinking? How do we go from here to there? How do we transition to that place? And what does that look like? He provides a few clues. Tēnei tangata. Providing fulfilling work, stakeholder assent. People they're on board with the kaupapa. We're all here, so we're all on board with the kaupapa, right? Alternative economies, cooperation over competition, earth care values, responsible business. Business has a job to do. Can't shy away from it. They have to be part of the solution, part of the whole. Māori economies of well-being. Professor Shelley Spiller, my colleague at Waikato University, is leading this whakaaro here. What is a Māori economy of well-being, and how do we support whānau who want to go there and be there in terms of well-being through economy, through enterprise? What are the principles? And the principles are there in our mātauranga. Taututu, reciprocity, collective leadership, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Balance, need some balance. How do we achieve balance? How do we operationalise what's in He Ara Waiora? You know, the Māori wellbeing framework that the Treasury has taken on board. And one of the ideas that we put forward is this idea of manahau. It's a concept of Mānuka Henare's idea of economy of mana, where the goal of business is to enhance the mana of others, and a reciprocal relationship ensues. That's the kind of idea of it, to achieve balance between those sorts of 17 goals. Busy. So take a look at that. Taututu. Dr. John Reid, my good friend from Tainui, Ngāti Pukeahu, but he's been happily ensconced in Canterbury for a long time now. has been working on this idea of tau ututu, this idea of give and take in our relationships with whenua, with wai. So how do we look after whenua and give back? Not just take, but give back. And he explains how tau ututu works in the sort of agribusiness and whole range of other areas as well. So how do we do that? Sustainable development. Okay, now we're getting to the crunch time now. So to talk about sustainable SDG, we better talk about the SDGs. How do we ask Papatuanuku? How do we ask Papatuanuku? And tēnei whanaina. So how do we ask nature? Karakia. Now, whanaunga Rangi, Nathanei, Rangi may not have invented karakia, but he's expanded it, and so it's made it accessible for us all to understand karakia and how we can have a meaningful relationship with ngā whetū, the stars, Papatuanuku, ngā atua, ngā uri o ngā atua, through karakia, through matariki, through ngā whetū. How incredible is that? So we can all be part of this. We can all ask nature through karakia. Sustainable development goals, awesome. They're a universal framework for goodness and a better world. And we have to think about, how do they apply to us? And one of the challenges I've observed is what's a unifying principle? What's the guidance? Where's the guidance when we're choosing between social, economic, environmental imperatives? How do we choose? How do we manage those tensions? And I'm still looking for a principle, some guidance as to how we choose. And my argument is that reciprocity, manaho, taututu, can help us navigate our way through. We see observance, we see, managing those tensions in the Māori marine economy. We're thinking about whairawa, resources and economic development, but also whaioranga. In this whare, whaioranga. Ki te whaiao, ki te taiao. And in the Māori marine economy, Māori enterprises are trying to figure out their way of how do we give expression to that kaupapa as well of, social, economic, cultural, environmental, spiritual, and also from our honouring our tipuna and also present-day realities. And this is Emily Mika down at the Himatangi Beach, and I was going to quote her because she wrote a little speech the other day, but I haven't had a chance to ask her about it, but it had to do with politics. She's got big plans for politics. She's 11 now. So I encourage you to do it. But we're indigenising the blue economy, and that's the research that we did with Sustainable Seas, Kua Mutu now. All the science challenges finished their work, but we tried to figure out what does an indigenous blue economy look like? How do we incorporate principles of te ao Māori, te tiriti o Waitangi? How do we share in the responsibility, the care of tangaroa, so that tangaroa is able to care for us? So that's the challenge that Māori enterprises face in that environment. Regina and I, we did this project, this tourism project, sustainable tourism project, with a whole bunch of other colleagues. It was awesome. Loved it. Api and others, yes, others were there. And anyway, Regina and I got to go to Whanganui River and go up and down the Whanganui River on the road, not on the river, driving along, and with Hayden Potaka. And Hayden was our guide. Can't get a better guide than Hayden, because he's chairman of everything over there, and he runs his own business as well, and he's awesome. Now, tawa tupua, if we want to think about how we talk to nature, how we ask Papatuanuku, what's the right thing to do? What should we do? Have a look at that example there in terms of what the iwi of Whanganui are doing, because their tipuna has been recognised as a tipuna, Tawa Tupua, the Whanganui River. They've got a whole framework that says, okay, this is what we should do, this is what you should do, this is what we should do together. And so it's possible to ask nature through frameworks like Te Pā Auroa and Te Pau Tupua. You know, those institutions do exist, those examples for us to follow do exist now. And they're coming to the fore. There's our little framework, so we had a stab at it. Read the paper, it's awesome paper, Regina. Now, just lastly, so it's possible in this world that we live in to have kaitiakitanga and use all of the technology available in the world. So using our mātauranga Māori and mātauranga o te ao whānui, bring it together, what Professor Durie was talking about, bringing the knowledge together for the best possible outcomes. Having kaitiakitanga, using technology, and John Reed's busy down in Christchurch sort of working that out. Using kaitiakitanga as a platform for environmental monitoring, but also development of agricultural enterprise down there. So it's possible. So you can have a listen to his kōrero as well. So the conclusion, just to wrap up, what are some key ideas that I guess wanted to share? Equity is no longer a viable principle for sustainable well-being. Now, it might be viable in our hearts and minds, but outside this whare, it may not be. So what is it then? Now, equity, we know what equity is. You know, the nurses and doctors and scholars in that area have explained it very well, what equity is. You know, it's unfair disadvantage that's fixable. We could do something about it, but we choose not to. Why is equity hard? It's because when we choose to follow the kōrero on equity, it means I feel like I'm giving something up. I'm losing. I'm missing out. Why should you have that, not me? You know, why? It just feels unfair, even though it's the right thing to do. We just can't handle it. Reciprocity helps operationalise waiora or heara waiora in terms of our relationships between people and papatuanuku. Sustainable development goals, universally relevant. Yes, we've got to apply that, but how do we localise it? How do we indigenise it? When we went up and down the river, Regina and I talked to the whānau there. Oh yeah, how are you applying the SDGs? Aotearoa. What's that thing? Gotta go. You know, so how do we localise it, indigenize it? And what does it look like for us? Te tiriti o Waitangi, framework for power sharing, truth telling and reconciliation. We've still got a bit of work to do, but it's there for us. And then just going back to Harmon, Willis, what a cool name, Willis. Okay, Willis was telling us we may be at a transition point. That was 1987. Are we still in transition? Probably we are. Still figuring things out. Are we on our transition point to a world view of unity where we see ourselves connected with nature, not apart from? Land is not property. Land is our mother. And if we look after the whenua, we're looking after ourselves. All of those sort of whakaaro, beautiful whakaaro. How do we get there? How do we transition from where we are now in our world, the way in which we do business, we pay bills, we consume, we produce? How do we transition from that to something better, something different? Big question, eh? And so when you fellas figure out what it is, please tell me. Like all academics, there's a list of references. So please do some homework and check out the references and come up with some answers, because I'd really love to hear them. So good ai tēnei, kia ora, thank you.
I'll give you an introduction.
Do you want to be? Hey, babe. Yeah. Pull that one out. That's up.
It's out. Get it.
Ka pai.
I'm Glenn Banks, and I'm in development studies at Massey. Lots of familiar faces out there, a few I don't know. Welcome. Along with Professor Regina Scavens, who I've got to say has done the bulk of the work, we're kind of responsible for today. I'd like to welcome you all, and particularly members of SLT from Massey. Really appreciate having you in the audience here. It's absolutely, it's reaffirming and validating of the work that we're doing. Wonderful talk, Jason, and I think I was sitting there thinking of what I've heard of your presentations before, Huhana, thinking there's a beautiful synergy between the two. My job here is just to be very quick because of that wonderful time thing that we all have to pay some attention to, but I'd like to start off by just introducing Professor Huhana Smith, who is Ngāti Tuku and Ngāti Ruakawa Kiti Toanga. As Huhana is an artist and an academic who's very passionate about kaitiakitanga, and I think one of the things that we'll find is that, and it struck me as you were talking, Jason, the practice of kaitiakitanga is what is so critical to making that shift from the abstract, your references, to what actually happens in the world. And I think Huhana's work is a wonderful example of the sorts of things that embody so much of the principles of kaitiakitanga and put them, actually, that notion of guardianship's not in the boardroom, it's actually out there amongst the trees, in the paddocks, in the swamp, up to your knees in water and all that sort of thing. So I won't say very much more. I think I've said all the rough notes here, and I'll leave it to you to introduce yourself from there. Thank you.
He mihi mahana ki a koutou katoa. He tino hane tinako te rongo ki te korero no Meihana Durie mea Jason Mika meharo ana. I roto I tēnei whare a tāhua mō tātou. There could not be better ways of expressing where we are, Pukeahu, where we can be through the mahi that you both have delivered today. So nui te mihi atu. Kia koutou katoa. I will just jump in, but what I really want to talk about today, Sustainable Development Goals. I'm a little bit of the Sustainable Survival Goals, and I say that because we need a lot of action. So I've been involved in research, active research over 25 years, and I'm getting impatient and I'm getting a bit greyer. So with the beautiful whakaaro that has come from our whai kōrero, from our first keynote, our second keynote, it is all about the change that is about us at the moment and what we must do to harness that. So we've had that beautiful expression, aha ko he wā tino pauri mō te motu, mō nā iwi o te motu, kua hinga I tētahi tōtara I roto I te wānui a tāne, our kingi tu heitia kua haere aia, but his daughter, his pōtiki, has come back to help. So this is magnanimous times, people. So I'm going to go back to that notion, action orientated is what we need to be doing. So we can talk about the 17 goals here. Sorry, you just did that too. Talk about the 17 goals here, but we do have considerable work to be done. Now, an artist, I am a professor, I am here at the College of Creative Arts, but I am very much about making real what we've all been thinking about and what we've all been studying over many, many years. So I'll just give you a little bit, we'll talk a little bit more about this stream system, the Waikōkapu stream. So trying to get adult Waikōkapu back up into this area, because meanwhile our people are busily catching their babies out at the coast at the moment. So, but Kōkapu is the native trout. So Waikōkapu is a stream that runs through our property. I'm talking about, principal homes. Meihana mentioned it this morning. Tūranga Waiwai is that principal home, but also our principal home is the Red Star in Kuku Horowhenua. So we're between the Tararua and we're between the Oho River and the Waikawa River. And the Green Star is my little farm. So I have a small farm in Kuku. Now, what I kind of want to talk to you guys about is the research we've done over time, and it's always been action-orientated, ground-based with our whānau, teaching ourselves how to grow a wetland forest back. Because as you can see, our beautiful lowland forest is gone. We don't have the te uruwera. We have an agriculturally modified landscape in which we are existing and surviving. So what we need to do is actually activate many projects across the whenua for the benefit of our future generations. Now, it's all helped us grow, this work that we've done. We've all become more well people because we had serious issues in the fact that we followed Pākehā farming modelling systems, which took us down the deep, dark environmental decline route. So now we are, in the last 25, 30 years, we've been lifting ourselves out of that and returning ourselves to a more replenished environment. So just over the last 25 years, what we've been doing. So replenishing the Oho Loop, protecting wetlands, we're growing wetland forests, so we have a 22-year-old forest now. Not 1,000, maybe 4, I'm not quite sure how old te uruwera would be, but we're not quite there yet, but we will get there. Engaging lots of people collaboratively in research projects to replenish the health of the Oho River, develop a harakeke sustainable fabric industry, which we're this close to kind of like set it off. I've only been following that for since 2005 with Rangi Te Kanawa and the rest of the people. So we're doing some really cool things here at Massey. Protecting wetlands, as I said, growing forests, protecting this very sensitive coastal zone. And we have sustainable development goals that are meant to be looking after our whānau who live in the sea. And then we also have notions of what we were trying to do for coastal erosion in bringing young landscape architects or architects studying at Victoria University. So over the years, done a lot of work in this kind of respect, done a lot of work around climate change. So Jason was just mentioning before, National Science Challenge has just finished, but we did 4 phases. So I finished 4 phases of National Science Challenge. But here we are, funded by Ngā Pai Te Maramatanga and funded by Ag Research in the greenhouse gas emission reduction kind of strategy. So we're very much sustainable development, climate change, is our tribes farm. So that coastal area, mountains to sea, Ngāti Tūkorehe, an iwi I te taho raukua ki te tonga, but here we are trying to sort out our tribes farm on the coast between the Oho and towards the Waikawa River. So, me whakaoriori tātou, let's mobilise. And we're going to do some mapping technologies and we are going to show our people what would be the best strategies for action to take ourselves forward. And so what we're doing is busily mapping our coast. I'll take you through this quickly. But photogrammetry. So we're, drone camera flights. We're out there, tracking satellites and pulling down this information to create these visuals which are going to blow our people away because they will be able to see their farm. So this is just one section of the farm just south of the Oho River. They will be able to see this large-scale 12-part map of hyper detail and we'll be able to say, here's where we're taking this out for natural revitalisation through forestry. Here's where we're going to re-wet areas and be part of the blue economy or the emissions trading market. If we get a really good system happening, we maybe need a little bit more, I'm not a great fan myself, but more circular economies in terms of well-being. But this kind of work that we're trying to do is about emissions reductions on our farm, because we're going to have to do this. It's not something that we're thinking is a nice thing to do. We have to do it. So emission reduction for our farm, re-wetting our wetland areas, reforesting our areas that are marginal pasture. But by mapping it, we are really able to tell exactly what needs to be done where. and this kind of notion of the hydrological analysis and that kind of stuff. So as an artist, I love maps. So I love the visual. The bigger, the better. The more we can get engaged in them and pore over them and see what we can do. So that's going to be a little bit of your exercise. That's just a little, we're going to put some maps out on the floor, and you're going to get down on the floor and you're going to pin things and you're going to write things and scribble all over my pieces of paper. But this was a winter wānanga that we just completed. We have done all these, they're called GCPs. These are all the points where we have satellite calibrated ourselves to our whenua, and then taken the drone camera, which is flown in a grid system across this, to calibrate, because Papatuanuku's got curves, and so she kind of curves, so we have to kind of just flatten her out a little bit in order to get these topographical maps that are almost three-dimensional. They can be three-dimensional, but we just need to flatten her out a bit so we get a little bit more ground truthing. But in terms of that, the top image there with all the dots on it is literally 135 little mats that we had to put around on our farm. So there's me standing on a dune system, looking back towards Samoa, freezing cold frosty morning, but glorious day. And just give you a little bit of an idea of just some of the lay of the land of our tribe's farms. So we've got a high dune ridgelines area and lowland, wetland, riverine area. So that was a project that we did over winter. I'll leave that. You can see that's our coastline out here, our Oha Awa, our Otarere Paimanga, Poroporo, the other one here, and that red circle's my little farm. Now I'm saying it's mine because my partner's gone and got bloody dementia and he's in care in Wellington, so I'm kind of running the show. So I tend to say yes, it is mine because he's not helping me much anymore. But anyway, but that's our little farm. And this was part of an old dairy factory complex. Now, I tell you this because the other thing about the reality of Māori lives is we have to buy land back, which is what I did. So I had to buy land back because unfortunately my great uncle, the poor Tiki o Te Whānau, my grandmother's youngest brother, did sell most of the whānau land in 76 and then tried to sell the last of it in 1985. Now, unfortunately, but that's part of that difficult what the impact of colonisation does do. So we do live with that reality, and all Māori have that reality. So I think when Jason was talking about what is that reality for people on the ground, we must take that into consideration. But so I'm part of a generation that have been alienated from whenua, but we still have some up the back. But I had to buy land back, so we bought land back that had been confiscated by the Crown. That was probably a good idea, eh? So that's what we did in 2006. And so that's what the land blocks looked like through the whole cadastralisation surveying process. That was what the land blocks looked like initially, and that was probably a map in 1942, and then this is kind of latest map now in terms of that title. And then this is what we have. So red roof is my house. I live in that house. I've moved full-time to Kuku now, and then you've got that nice big green kind of paddock is the area that we bought back. It was compulsorily taken by the Crown in 1942 for the war effort. So that was a cheese factory. And that cheese factory had actually been set up by my great-great-great-grandfather, amongst others, as a Māori economy in the turn of the 20th century. But slowly, the power base got flipped and it became the Wellington Dairy Company. Anyway, but that land back, bought in 2006, let's grow an olive grove. What was I thinking? But anyway, let's grow an olive grove. I am happy to say that I do produce the best award-winning olive oil, and I've just entered my oil for the next Gold Award, we hope. It is exceptional olive oil, and considering that we've got climate change issues globally with olive oil, I'm actually quite going, now it's not such a bad thing we did do olives, yeah, in Aotearoa. So olive grove. But I think what I'm trying to say, in all the things that I've done over the years, it's always been ground-based. Go whenua up. Generate your answers from the whenua up, because ask Papatuanuku and she will tell you. And that means you have to be a little bit more noho puku, a little bit more meditative, a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more relating to the whenua rather than just through the intellect. let's return some carbon to whenua as well. So I have an olive grove, we prune our trees, I need to burn that carbon, but I need to burn that wood, to create biochar or carbon, but these are pyrolysis fires, so these are not big white plumes that, burn all over Hora Whenua. This is a hot fire to create biochar, and then that biochar is returned, when it's activated, it's returned back to our stream system, but also when it's non-active, that means it's just straight biochar from the kiln. It goes into water and it sucks up all the nitrates and phosphates. And then if you activate it with cow manure, I've got a few friends come over. I'm just saying to the boys, help yourself, just go and pee on that, please. Start activating my pile of biochar, because, boys do it a little bit more easily than girls. So I have done it myself, just if you want to know. But that is a way of activating carbon and putting it back in the whenua as part of that carbon sequestration. So that's the process of burning biochar, and then what we get in the end. I'm an artist, okay, can't help myself, so I work with other artists who are environmentally minded, so we create installations which tell everybody about these crazy things we do back on the Waikokapū Grove and Orchard. So this was a biochar exhibition, or the Kuku Biochar project that we did. Another way of telling more about what needs to be done, but do it through action-orientated projects that actually work. Because the more people see that you can actually do this, the more people will do it. And then just, coffee sacks, stitching them together. This is me, biochar, making paintings out of biochar, and then, keep stitching, and you can see the little stream system just up the top there on the cadastral, which is our whenua. And then I say, okay, look, we've got, these are with Oropu, we're called Te Waituhia Nuku, drawing ecologies, and so we're all about big environmental projects for Papa. And so we pulled together more people to help us stencil biochar paint onto, I think we had 11 rolls, we got 9 done in 6 days. So we stenciled these with the Waiwai Pakura pattern, and the Waiwai Pakura is the footprint of the Pukeahu. So we're in the lounge room of the Pukeahu at the Waikokapū stream. So let's and you can see around here with the popo, we are again referring to the natural world. So we did that last year. This time last year, we were stenciling. And then that poor, much maligned little stream, that was the last little piece of the stream, because we've revegetated all this section, but we had one little section left. And so we put a kākahu, a new cloak around our stream. And we put it on the north side because we could afford to plant the north side. So this is, research funds. And then put the Waiwai Pakura pattern and then plant it out. This is what this activity with many people on our stream in Kuku. And then to finally, this is people in the water. We've, Fulbright people. We've had so many scholars from all around the world come and help on this project. They are the leaky dams we created with the biochar in the sack, and that's what's filtering our water system at the moment. And we keep replacing these as needed. And then that's kind of the aerial photograph again about what it looked like from the air. It has been seen from the air, which has given me new ideas for new projects. So now the next projects are the big marae that you're going to see from the air, but they will be reflecting the visual culture of Tūkora here. So we will be looking for, there's some patterns that you have on meeting houses. The ringa-ringa out here have got ceramics on them, but there's usually a carving at the fingers, hands, and I'm going to use that carving. The nututa is going to be the shape of the big marae that are going on the spare paddocks on my block. So when you fly over, there's going to be these massive kumara gardens, and this is Huhana's next slightly mad but fabulous project. And again, because we're doing photogrammetry, I have access to all the best drone camera flyers. So this is what the stream looked like in February this year. So it's really growing. So this is the summer flow, there's no flow, and then this is what it's looking like now more so. So we had some more planting done on the southern side, not with the beautiful kākahu this time, but they are growing really well. Okay, and then this is what got this flourishing system happening. So that's my kōrero, just to kind of give you a bit of a rundown. But what I kind of wanted you to do, because I think you all need, after having Keynote 1, Keynote 2, and kōrero 3, I think you need to get up and we're going to do a bit of a workshop. Does that seem appropriate? Yeah. Okay.
Would you like us to move all the chairs back?
I think so.